Welcome back to the Georgia Show. I'm Bill Quinn. Todd Wood will join us shortly. He is in transit as we speak. We have a full show today. As we get going, we have a request for you. And this week is a great example. We continue to put people on the ground in key locations across the country, around the world. And we need help making sure that we can get those right resources where they need to be and bring you the news as it happens and as completely as we can make it happen. So if you would, please consider investing in our no ad subscriptions. They're available on each of our digital properties all the way across the country and, in fact, around the world. So in the case of Georgia Record, you'll find it right on the front page. $10 a month eliminates the ads from your view of the Georgia Record. And if you want a discount, you can do the entire year for $100. So thank you for considering that. We appreciate it. And this week, as an example, we're going to be spending a good portion of the back half of the week at CPAC and bringing you reports throughout that event. And I'm betting they're going to be pretty darn interesting. So thank you for that. As we get going, I want to share a message from one of our key sponsors, the Wellness Company. So let's take a look at that.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
All right. So over the course of the next weeks and months, Georgia will go through a series of conventions to choose precinct, county, district, and ultimately state leadership for the GOP Republican Party. We are lucky enough to be joined today by David Cross, who is running for GOP chair in Georgia. David, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
So you are communicating. People report through email and other means. And of course, you're here with us. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your vision, other things that you think are important, and also encourage folks about what they can do to become involved. We are hearing more and more that this mechanism relies heavily on people becoming involved, and in some cases becoming involved as early as this next Saturday. So take us through all of those, if you could, please.
Sure. Actually, Bill, it's this past Saturday because Cherokee County had their precinct caucuses yesterday. So some counties, some of the over 80,000 population counties have started this month. The vast majority will be this coming Saturday, I think the 22nd. And then the under 80,000 counties predominantly will be next month. And they're staggered, I think, through the different weekends of of March. But the whole point is whether you're going to vote for me or vote for somebody else, the primary thing is I want to have as many people involved as possible. And the only way that you can do that is to participate in the state convention. And the way that you do that is by starting with the precinct caucuses that begin in your county right now. So if you haven't re-upped, please go pay your dues, get involved, go to some meetings, and put your hand up when somebody says, "Hey, do you want to be a delegate?"
Yep. That there's actually, I believe, a place on a document that you'll be able to indicate your willingness to be a delegate as early as this Saturday, or if you've already gone through those caucuses in your county, then you've already had that opportunity. One of the things that I'm hearing is many counties, because there's folks that get involved for 1 year and then they may not be involved the following year, often leave empty seats, delegate seats that they could have they leave them unfilled. And as an example, I believe one of the key counties told me they have up to, I think, 600 seats, but typically fill maybe 150 of those. And so there's a bunch left over. And so what strikes me is, if someone that wants to become involved is concerned, well, I won't make the cut and blah, blah, blah. I think that's not as much of a concern as many people would think it was.
Yeah, that to me is one of the key issues, and again, it's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be running on. And I sent out an email this morning, and I'm communicating by email rather than trying to text people, because goodness knows we've gotten way too many political texts. And what I did today was I sent out just kind of like the broad brushstrokes of what the game plan is going to be going forward. And as it stands right now, and of course, yes, the best is yet to come. Part of the growth plan involves trying to get people, involved in.
Oops, looks like David may have frozen for the moment. We'll see if he comes back here in just a second. So David has mentioned to me before the show that he has sent out several of these emails. They have increasing information, reminders on various key dates, and what was most interesting to me was he's beginning to talk about some of the plans that hope to be implemented in a sort of a different management structure, different management philosophy in the GOP. And so let's see if we can get David back here. There we go. Let me pull this out and see if that makes it easier for David to rejoin. Sometimes one of our tools makes it a little bit tough and begins to share memory across various participants. In any case, we were saying that there's going to be various levels of this. So you already heard that for some counties, the precinct caucuses happened this past weekend. For others, many of them, they'll happen this coming Saturday. Following that, there will be a date where the county convention occurs, and that's where you'll have a chance to see, meet, and vote on your county, what's called executive committee, chairman, and so forth. And that allows you to pick the leaders for your county. Following that, there's a district roll up, if you will, and that is made up of folks from various counties that participate in a district. And so you might be in the 6th district, you might be in the 7th, but you'll have an opportunity to weigh in. Here we go. Let's pull David back in. There you go.
Bill, I don't know what the issue is, but you know what? Now we're on the iPad. I'm giving up on this, on the laptop.
No worries. It's good to have you back. Okay. So here's where we were, and I think you were starting to get ready to talk to us a little bit about some of the underpinning of the plans here that you're talking to people about.
Yeah. So one of the major things that we're having a problem with is filling those seats at the state convention, and I want to reward people for their involvement. One of the things that's further down in the email that we talk about, rewarding people is going to be, having a particular club called the Tusk Club. That's going to be 4 people that have gone to at least 5 conventions. We're going to recognize them, with a special Tusk pin that basically, says, hey, I've been here before, I've done this. And that way, when you have new people that are participating at the convention, they can look for people with that pin to go, hey, what's going on? How do we do things? How do we handle things? So that's one part that I want to do. The other thing I want to do too is I want to really streamline this whole credentialing thing. It takes hours and hours and hours for credentialing, and I don't understand why that's the case. I mean, when I go to see a concert or something like that, I've bought my tickets in advance. When I go there, if there's a security issue or something like that, you can show your ticket, you can show your ID, you get in, you're going to have assigned seating. That's how we're going to be able to to reduce this credentialing nightmare that goes through 3 hours.
David, while you continue, I'm going to bring Todd Wood in. He's able to join now. Hang on just a moment.
Hey,
there
guys.
we go. Okay. Todd, you're with us. David, please go ahead, right ahead.
Yeah. So we need to up our game right now. When you go check into a state convention right now, it's the equivalent of like you coming in and you give your ID to somebody and they got to look you up in a phone book, essentially, and then they got to give you your credential cards and that kind of thing. There's a way to simplify this tremendously using technology. And I keep telling people it's the 21st century. We should be leveraging technology, whether it's for the convention or whether it's, whether or not you want me to come out and speak, at your county party. There's 150 Republican, county parties throughout the state. We have 9 that are inactive, but there's 150 statewide. And I've got people all over the state that want me to come visit. And I keep telling them we need to leverage technology. It's not an efficient use of my time, or anybody's time for that matter, to drive 3 to 5 hours each way to go speak with people. It's not that I don't want to speak with people. It's just that I've already totaled one car, in this whole thing in the last couple of years. I'm not going to do another. And I just think I think we need to be using our heads.
Yeah. So, you mentioned being able to speak to these various groups. When you talk to them, what are you hearing? What are their concerns coming back from the various counties and districts?
Well, it's interesting. I haven't spoken with a lot of people, just yet. That we're just now kind of getting started with that. But in private conversations that I'm having with people, some of the things that I'm continuing to hear about are things like the corporation versus the party. That's something that needs to be taken care of, the very first week, that things get started, things like that, that are really on people's minds. And the other part too is, I've pointed out the fact that, Trump should have won Georgia by 7. He won by 2.2. And, I was talking with Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones recently, and I said, do you have a Trump Force 47 that's on the ground that I don't know about? And he said, no. And I said, well, Bert, I'm afraid you're going to lose, and it's going to be really close, but I'm concerned you're going to lose. And the only way that I can think of to help that, or to improve those odds, is to make it so that we have a much stronger, more vibrant Republican Party. And as it stands right now, we just recently lost 2 House seats. In the last 5 or 6 years, I think we've lost like 9 seats, in the House. I think we've lost 2 in the Senate. And if we continue on this trend, it's like a melting iceberg. We can't have this happen. And the only way that's not going to happen is if we re-engage people, show them appreciation, give them more value than what they're paying for, with their dues, and really get them engaged.
David, let me ask you the question.
Oh, go ahead.
What's the calculus of the GOP head or leadership in Georgia? They've kicked out a lot of the MAGA people. They refused really to deal with the election issues. People don't feel, as you say, enfranchised. And the party, as you say, is a melting iceberg. Are they just trying to hold on to power as long as they can? I look at this DOGE stuff in D.C., and I think, well, in Fulton County specifically, we tried to show that we think $8 to $10 million was not given to candidates out of the trust because of mismanagement, what they even admitted to. So, and why aren't we having DOGE to look at those kind of, it looks like these issues are being overlooked on purpose, and the people see this. And so is it just new leadership? And what is the calculus on this side?
Listen, it's going to take new leadership. The current chairman, I will tell you, the current chairman, he, when he was a senator, he voted probably the way that I would have. When he was in the Senate, a lot of senators didn't like him because he didn't, go along to get along. And I can appreciate that. But here's the thing. You have somebody who's a solo practitioner, who's accustomed to, calling their own shots, versus somebody else. This is an organization where we need to mobilize 100,000 people across the state. And in order to do that, you've got to have somebody who has had experience building teams and putting teams together. We've got to have teams working, within the state, within the state organization, within each one of the districts, and drilling down, into the counties. And it's got to be one of these things. Like for instance, we had a shot at getting the 2nd district, for the United States Congress, and that was down. The 2nd district is the southwest corner of the state. Basically goes from Columbus, all the way down to the Florida line. And when that was going on, I was working with the Republican candidate Wayne Johnson, and I said, Wayne, he came and saw me a couple of times, and I asked him, I said, Wayne, you were kind of joking around before, and you said nobody from the Republican Party had helped you. And he corrected me a couple of days ago, and he said, no, David, he said, you're the only person that helped me from the Republican Party. And I find that mind-boggling, because in the 2nd district where he was running is Muskogee County. And for those that don't know, Muskogee County is Columbus, Georgia. And again, for those that don't know, Columbus, Georgia is where Josh McCoon is from. He had a perfect opportunity to go in and help, and to help, potentially win a congressional seat, for crying out loud. And Josh was a no-show. And we can't have that. It's time for a change of leadership. And, listen, I'm not long-term for this job. I mean, I look at it like this. I want to get in there, get things fixed, get it, get the ship, corrected and moving in the right direction, get the processes installed, and then maybe step back and, and let somebody else, run it. But right now, we are the Titanic, and we're taking on water.
We have all this stuff going on, David, at the national level, which is massive change. But you don't see it happening in Georgia. It's like they think they can just stay in their cocoon, in their walls, and nothing's going to happen. I don't see that. We haven't done anything on the elections. The elections are still not okay. No,
and in fact, Raffensperger was in front of Clint Dixon last week, asking for even more money, to fix his system, or to spend a lot less just on patching it, so that we can then send that money, we can send an extra $33 million onto people that were hurt during the hurricane. And I'm totally for that. But what Raffensperger leaves out is that we have a $19 billion surplus in the state of Georgia. Right now, the governor is planning on sending back $1 billion, which is $500 for every family that's out there. Big effing deal. There's plenty of money out there to solve these problems, and the governor right now does not want to wait. He does not want to waste money on throwing these election machines, into the river, when in fact it's probably going to save us a lot more money, time, effort, and energy by getting rid of them and moving to human-counted, hand-marked paper ballots.
And one of the key advantages is that likely people will believe in the elections again once we get that done.
Yeah, I mean, if we're counting ballots like our grandfathers did, but the thing is that our grandfathers and grandmothers, when they were counting ballots before, they didn't have high definition cameras in order to make sure that everybody was honest. So the politicians are going to toss out these idiotic excuses saying, "Oh, back in my day, it was easy to rig an election, by using paper ballots." But you know what? They didn't have high definition cameras. They didn't count those ballots with a news crew 15 feet away from them.
Todd, you mentioned it. When you see all this going on at the federal level, and you begin to see the level of myriad issues, not just fraud and abuse, but downright theft and cheating, and it seems to be everywhere. You have to wonder, in a state where we've got a $40 billion budget each year, and the governor just asked for another $4 billion for this year's budget. How much of that would benefit from a look that, like what's going on within DOGE? And why is that not happening? Why are we going the opposite direction? Burt Jones had announced that, we're going to do DOGE for Georgia, and he wrapped it around another bill that had been in place since last year. The problem is, within a week later, then the governor's already asking for essentially a 10% uptick for the year, going in the opposite direction. It eventually, I have to believe, I think we all want to believe, that the same things we see happening at the federal level are going to be pursued in Georgia. And, there might be
maybe some pressure from the White House to do that.
Maybe.
Listen, Republicans are supposed to be for smaller government and less taxes. And Governor Kemp is going the opposite direction right now. And in fact, Raffensperger is trying to defund SB 189 that passed last year to try and make things even more secure. He's like, "Oh no, we don't. That's not a priority for us."
Well, it's obvious to me these guys are like Zelensky, like Obama, like Schultz in Germany. They're working for somebody else. They're not interested in the people of Georgia and their opinions and motivations and agendas. It's something else, and
now,
it just
Todd,
has to be.
That's a serious charge now. All right, so I challenge the executive branch to come out and prove to me Prove to the state with your actions, that we're wrong. Prove it to me. Prove it to us with your actions.
Yeah, it is a serious charge. But I don't see any other conclusion. When you don't want to fix the elections, there's a reason for that. I mean, when you don't talk about human trafficking, there's a reason for that. I'm just saying what everybody else is saying.
I want to ask one more question about what you've already announced, David. You use the word transparency in some of your emails and communications. Give us an idea what that would mean in comparison to what we've seen in the last 4 years or 3 years.
All right. So really simply, rather than Republicans getting an email like every other day, spouting off whatever the news blurb of the day is with an ask for money, I want to send out maybe one email each week to very succinct, let people know what's going on, let people know what successes and challenges and failures that we've had with the Republican Party, and I want it to be brief and to the point. The other thing I want to do too is I want to make sure that with transparency, I want to make sure that our treasurer has total access, to all of the financial records and can provide not only the executive committee and the state committee, but also anybody who asks, where is the money going? Where's my money going that I'm giving to the party? I mean, I'd like to know. I'm giving a couple $1,000, and I know that $18,000 of it I think was wasted last year, on a boondoggle, because the chairman decided that he knew better than anybody else, and he didn't want to reach out for help either from me or from the treasurer. So I want to see more transparency. It's going to come from financial reports. It's going to come from communication. And one of the things I was talking with Wesley Cox about recently was about setting up, and with you guys is going to be setting up like a once a week coffee with the chairman, show to do, just to say, hey, here's what's going on, so that if you want to listen in your car, or if you want to listen on a podcast, you can find out like what's going on. And some of those shows are going to be like, there's not a lot going on, but here's some things that we're working on. But it's going to be an effective way, I think, to make sure that people know what is going on around the state and in their area.
I think many people will say to themselves, gosh, we finally have a venue where we can ask a question and actually receive an answer of some type. So
totally.
Let's see, where can people get in touch? Where can they follow you, please, so that they can either get involved or leverage what you are bringing out, so they can begin to drive it in their own areas?
All right, so you can learn more by going to CrossForGA or CrossForGeorgia.com. Either one of those will work. You can find out what's happening right there. I'm going to have emails that are going out, and I apologize for sending so many recently, but I've been trying to point out some of the deficiencies of the current management system that we've got right now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of I feel like where we are right now is we have a shortstop on the team, and a shortstop on a baseball team was one of the most important positions. And we have a shortstop that has a lot of unforced errors that are happening all the time. And that's not where we need to be. So go to CrossForGeorgia or CrossForGA.com. There's a contact me link that's on there, and reach out to me. Let me know what your questions are.
That's great. Todd, anything else?
No, that's it. David, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
My pleasure.
And we'll look forward to
We'll extend the same offer to McCoon and see if he'll come on and talk.
Excellent. I'd love to hear it.
All right. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, guys.
That's great. So how are your travels, Todd? Everything under control?
Yes. We're getting ready for CPAC. You're going to be there. We're growing rapidly, and there's just too much going on, to be honest. But we're trying to hold it all together and get bigger and better and more effective for our audience. And thank you for holding down the fort in Georgia, Bill. I really appreciate it. But we'll be at Mar-a-Lago soon for an event. We'll be reporting live, and then we'll be at CPAC after that.
That's great. Let's before we move on to the next segment, let's go ahead and play a message from one of our sponsors.
This is a special report. Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to make sure people are getting their hands around because some people are still watching the regular mainstream media, and mainstream is not talking about all the things that are being uncovered and accomplished through the work of Elon Musk, his amazing team, and other initiatives going across the government now to include the HHS work that's going to be done by RFK and his team. So here's one starting point. Many people know the U.S. debt clock. It shows our debt as it continues to roll up. This is a snapshot, but if you go up to, if you look up usdebtclock.org, you can watch this thing roll in real time. And the national debt rolls so fast you can't even see the usually the right hand 4 numbers or 5 numbers in it is rolling so quickly. But notice down at the bottom, they have added a DOGE clock. That is actually, as opposed to additional debt, that is accumulated savings, as they identify savings and money that has been clawed back from either inappropriate or improper programs. And it's accumulating. We're already at 101 billion, so making progress.
That's fantastic.
Excuse me.
I had somebody ask me the other day where they can see, the totals that DOGE has saved, and you just answered my question. Thank you. I didn't know about that.
So they roll that constantly as well. It's rather amazing. It's speeding up. And it's speeding up because they're finding so much that's wrong. We're going to have to, and we really encourage folks that are watching all in Georgia, all the way across the country and everywhere they're seeing us. You've got to open your belief systems to understand just how bad this picture is becoming. There are cases where money has been spent to deliberately deceive the American people. One of those came up this week, and believe it or not, it's spending that was done, according to this report, from the DOD and was spent with Reuters. And I zoomed up the description of what this is because you really can't believe it. But this is a service, usaspending.gov, that tracks where government money is going. And look at what they call this: active social engineering, defense, large-scale social deception.
Yep.
That's
Amazing.
what it says on the website for this. This is DOD spending that was sent to Reuters. That's just one tiny example. But you've got to get ready to hear that there's a bunch of very bad things that have been done and are being done and are being stopped. And this is why you see, some of these players from Congress and from the senior executive service and elsewhere in government yelling and screaming that, oh, we can't do this. We can't have unelected parties getting into our systems and so forth. Well, guess what? By doing that, we're uncovering fraud. And I hesitate to even use the word waste. This is much worse than waste. And as we go through this, we find these interesting little vignettes of signal, I'll call them, from Trump and from others. Many people know that there's a door that opens into the Oval Office that really looks like part of the wall when it's closed. During several meetings this week, they left the door open. You can see it on the left-hand side of the this picture up toward the top. You can see the edge of the door being opened. Out in the hall that leads to, I believe, the secretarial area outside Trump's office, he has framed the picture of his mugshot from here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And so as you go in to meet with the president, the last thing you see before you go into the Oval Office is him staring from that picture defiantly saying, I don't care what they do to me. I'm in the way so that they can't get to the American
people. Of course,
people.
the legacy media tried to spin that as hubris or, ego. But your point is taken. It's meant to show that, he has been resilient in the face of all this repression.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we wanted to share that. We're going to come back to the reaction of Congress to some of this in a few minutes, but I want to move over to an issue here in Georgia. We last week and throughout the week, we reported on Governor Kemp's surprising move toward something he's calling tort reform and the urgency with which he described that this has to get done either this session or he's already implying he'll do a special session to make sure it gets done. We are receiving from folks all over the state all kinds of valuable information so that we can both understand this legislation, but also hear some of the things that have cropped up in meetings around Georgia. We'll talk about a few of those in just a moment. Let's if you go to the Georgia Record, by the way, you will see most of the same information paralleled in the georgiarecord.com to talk about this tort reform. We believe that this is almost the exact opposite of the way it's being portrayed. And I'll give you some examples as we go through it. But this picture says it all to me. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing. They are portraying this as, oh, this is good for the people of Georgia. This is good for consumers. As a matter of fact, the PAC that is supporting it behind Kemp calls themselves Protecting American Consumers Together. None of that fits what they are trying to do here. Let's talk about the details so you can understand. Within the bill, and if you go to georgiarecord.com, you may download the entire bill and read it for yourself. We trust that the Georgians are well educated and they're well able to read this for themselves. But we will point out a few things that we believe are critical in this. One is this notion of economic versus non-economic damages. Damages, as you know, become claims that are claimed from a plaintiff against a defendant in civil suits and other places. But in this case, what they're trying to do is separate economic. Economic, as you can see described here, I'll paraphrase this. Economic are those damages that you can put an exact dollar figure to. So they'd be hospital bills, they'd be drug bills, they'd be ambulance bills, they'd be things that you got charged for as a result of some damage, some harm that came to you, and you can put an exact dollar figure on it. The other type of damages are non-economic, what used to be called in some circles pain and suffering, and the other aspects that are very frankly just as much part of damage to a person or their family or their loved ones, but they don't have a specific dollar figure associated with them. So, for example, think about the age-old adage: how do you put a price on a human life? How do you do that? And especially if you're dealing with the loss of a family member, a parent, a child, a brother, a sister, whoever. How do you do that when the circumstances of loss are just potentially horrendous in some cases? And we know we've seen things like this right here in Georgia in the past year and a half, and we pray for the families that have been impacted by such things. But you cannot fail to acknowledge that certain damages do not always translate into a dollar figure. But they would, in this bill, they are trying to convince you that they need to. And indeed, they define the non-economic damages in this way. And they talk about discomfort, anxiety, hardship, distress, suffering, inconvenience, physical impairment, mental anguish, disfigurement, loss of enjoyment of life. You can see that these are not small things. These are very important. The problem is that the way that this bill reads is they wish to put in rules in place within the context of a trial that if a counselor, an attorney, mentions or states certain facts around non-economic damages within earshot, within hearing of one or more members of a jury before the court deems that it's time to do that, it says the court shall take action and potentially excuse prospective jurors or perhaps the entire jury, depending on what the court deems as proper. Why would you do that? Experienced trial attorneys that we've talked to say there really isn't a way to separate economic versus non-economic damages in the course of a trial. The trial proceeds based on witnesses that are called, that are able to describe the circumstances, the events, and then consequently the damages, both in economic and non-economic terms. Think of it this way: if you're going to ask somebody on the stand, we understand you got in a car accident, what happened? As part of that, what happened, you're also going to hear about the pain and suffering and the resulting damages that perhaps are more lasting and represent these non-economic damages. There's really no way to separate these. Pardon me. The other thing that has cropped up is, again, relying on experienced trial attorneys that have looked at this. They note that Georgia has adopted federal rules of evidence, meaning at the federal level, federal laws define what and how evidence may be presented in a trial. And attempting to separate these economic and non-economic evidence and testimony is inconsistent with the way trials normally flow. So they're talking about a completely different flow to a trial, separating it into pieces, as it were. And they say that's not workable in a trial setting. And the reason is because you call a witness and you want to fully explore what that witness knows and can share truthfully. And very frankly, doing it another way may indeed violate these federal rules of evidence that Georgia has adopted. So there may be actually legal reasons why certain of these can't be implemented. So this non-economic and economic damages is one factor in this bill. Another one is something called stay of discovery. And again, you have to think of this in the context of a trial. If a party sues another party, so the plaintiff sues the defendant may file a motion, or a party may file a motion to dismiss before filing an answer and pursuant to this code section. If they file a motion to dismiss, discovery shall be stayed. So normally, if you sue someone, they have to file an answer, and then they can also file a motion to dismiss. If they file a motion to dismiss in this case, and it's before the answer is due, discovery is stayed. Well, what if something in their motion to dismiss requires further information in order to even argue that a dismissal is not appropriate at this time? By staying discovery, this section makes it more difficult for in one case, a plaintiff to actually show that they have just cause to pursue this matter and have it adjudicated by the court. Would this result in some cases being dismissed because the plaintiff simply doesn't have enough information to argue against the dismissal? That's what some of the attorneys are questioning. So again, who would benefit from such a thing? Well, it's normally going to be the defendant. And in a wrongful death or a bodily injury case, who is the defendant? Well, typically it can be a party, but they're typically backed up by an insurance company. So again, back to who benefits from all of these things in this new bill. Most people are looking at it and they're saying, hey, the insurance companies benefit, or perhaps corporations. Pardon me. Here's an interesting one. Seatbelts are spoken of in this prospective bill. And in there, they state that if parties are involved in a motor vehicle accident, and any party sitting in a seat where a seatbelt is available has not used that seatbelt. They sit down, they may be a passenger in the back seat. They didn't happen to put their seatbelt on. That fact may be taken into account in determining things like negligence, causation, comparative negligence, and may be used to, and it says right there in that almost the last line, diminish any recovery for damages. Again, who would this benefit? It benefits the defending insurance company and the defendant in the case. What if the example that was shared with me, what if you get hit by a drunk driver? One of the people riding in your passenger seat in the back had no part in the accident, was not injured, didn't contribute to the accident in any way, however, was not wearing their seatbelt. Could that diminish your recovery based on being harmed by a drunk driver just because someone sitting behind you that wasn't harmed, didn't contribute to the accident, didn't cause anything, wasn't wearing their seatbelt?
Yeah, a lot of people in Ubers in the back don't wear seatbelts also, so you're right. It's the backseat issue that's interesting.
That's correct. And just think about who it benefits. If you get run into by someone else and it's their fault, this potentially is used or could be used to make an argument that might diminish any or the amount of recovery for damages. Again, who benefits? It's becomes more and more simple as we go through this. So one question that people are asking is who brought this bill forward? Well, John Kennedy put it on the radar this week, and he's one of the sponsors. But look at the list of sponsors. Holy smokes! It looks like, one of those old movies they used to make with a cavalcade of stars. Everybody who's anybody seemed to want to get their name on this bill. Why would that be? Well, who's pushing it? Kemp. So if they want to be in good graces with Kemp, perhaps they feel they need to be on this bill as a sponsor. Is that the right thing? Well, consider the names involved here, and we're not going to read them out individually, but you can see them again. We're going to publish this in the Georgia Record as well. But we just got through reporting on some things that we've discovered about members of the Senate and stuff that they've been involved with. So think back for a moment. When Senator Colton Moore was kicked out of the Republican caucus, who caused that? Many of the people, if not all of them on this page, are members of the Republican caucus, including some of the ones in leadership. Who was noted in our expose for Peach State values when we found whom we found working against Republican candidates during the last primary? Matt Brass. His name appears right there on this list. When Colton Moore delivered video and spoke about the illegals being trafficked through Hartsfield Airport, who stood up and demanded an investigation and action? And unfortunately, as we've reported previously, about 3 weeks later, Laken Riley lost her life in Athens. None of these people. But here they are, jumping on the bandwagon for tort reform. Backed by a concern, a PAC, if you will, that calls themselves Protecting American Consumers, which is...
I think it's obvious it's a corporate agenda.
Of course.
Yeah.
So we wanted to bring those things out. We think that that's important for people to look at. And when you go back and you look at what's going on in the federal level, we believe we're going to continue to see more and more of, unfortunately, concerning things right here in Georgia from our own legislative body. How that all looks, we don't know yet. But as we learn things, we will be bringing them out. We did notice one thing that we would recommend they consider, and we think could be much more important than this tort reform bill. Dr. Peter McCullough has brought out a proposed schematic or a boilerplate, if you will, for a comprehensive bill to ban DNA and RNA injections. And he's proposing that all states look into this as quickly as possible. And we could do that right now. Given what we are seeing, which we'll be reporting more on in the coming days, there's a vastly increasing incidence of adverse effects, including sudden death and what's called excess death, which means growth in people dying from various diseases. How much of this is in line with this? These injections, we don't know, but McCullough and company are indicating that there is a very tight correlation that needs to be taken into account. So
I saw also that Louisiana is no longer going to promote vaccines in general, not even just the COVID vax, but any vaccines. They're not going to promote them for citizens of Louisiana. So, that obviously local jurisdictions can do what they want, but go ahead.
No, you're right on. And I think you're going to see more of that. Once RFK is able to bring out and explain the information that he has been working on for quite some time, just like he's done with autism, as we learn more, we're going to find some harsh truths in here, which means we're going to find out things that have been harming people and contributing to these chronic illness rates that are higher in the U.S. than elsewhere around the world for reasons that up to now people couldn't explain. I bet we're going to be able to explain them now.
Well, you know what? We're on the right side of history, Bill, on all of these, if not all of these issues we've been discussing for the last several years. And there's a lot of GOP operatives in Georgia who are saying we're not for the Republican Party, we're for Kamala Harris or whatever. We haven't had time to deal with those those accusations, but we're going to in the near future. But when we can find some time to deal with it. But look, we're right on all these issues. We're right on the vaccines. We're right on corporate interests, and we're going to keep talking about it. And because that's what we think good journalism is about. And we do need a DOGE in Georgia to go through and get to the bottom of all these issues. So maybe that'll come from the federal level. We'll see.
Yep. Well, and the other thing that we see playing out is we bring out this data, we give almost always bring the receipts with us, as we just got through doing. We're showing the actual language from the bill. It isn't fun. It isn't pleasant. It isn't comfortable, but we end up being proven right over time again and again and again and again because we do those things. So, so the next layer to this is, okay, we have concerns about legislation that's being obviously pushed here in Georgia. What are the reactions that we see going on at the federal level? Well, here's something interesting. Keep in mind that Tulsi Gabbard and RFK have been confirmed. Kash Patel is still hanging fire. They need to get him confirmed. Monday is a national holiday, so they had a long weekend. The senators could have stuck around and worked on this, but guess where they decided to go? They went to see their buddy.
How are you?
How you doing?
Hi.
Good to see you, pal.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You look good. How's it
Yeah,
going?
really?
How you doing?
Yes. Yes.
Hang in there.
Thank you.
Got a lot of friends here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Now, they didn't all go, but you'll notice, is that Schiff down there at the end of the table?
I was going to say, is that Adam Shifty Schiff down there? It looks like him.
I think that's Schiff. I saw Lindsey Graham for sure. And then Cornyn, I believe, and a couple others that I recognize. But the bigger issue is, why would anybody think that this is a priority for this weekend? I mean, given everything that's going on,
ending a war is a priority, but they're not interested in ending the war.
They're not interested. As a matter of fact, Lindsey Graham is referring to, you're I think he called Zelensky the ally I've been looking for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make this stuff up.
So well, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, again, I keep reiterating, we have to be willing to accept what we are seeing. Somebody didn't create this. This is an AI. This is a real meeting with these guys. A number of people reported it. A bunch of people have the video. Why would they do this? Why would we have, even from here in Georgia, why would we have our U.S. legislators flying across to Ukraine to bend the knee to this guy and promise more money and more support?
Who's
mocking
mocking
the face of
Trump? They're mocking Trump. This morning we put out a story on CDM.press where Trump wanted $500 billion in rare earth, and the Ukrainians mocked him and said, "We'll give you eggs because your eggs are so expensive." I mean, I find that, just off the charts. Just makes me angry. But go ahead.
Yeah, the challenge though is every time somebody does that to him, he seems to one up him and end up winning.
I agree. Yeah.
So one of our good supporters, Pete Berniger, brought out something that I wanted to share too, and this goes back to, what the heck do you say about folks in our Congress? And here he calls out exactly what I believe is going to be DOGE's next focus, or one of the next focuses, and that is trying to explain, and I believe they will be able to explain, why folks that are making $160,000 to $200,000 a year are able to accumulate tens of millions, in some cases over 100 million in wealth, while they've been sitting in Congress. How is that possible? We see, we've talked in the past fairly extensively about insider trading and utilizing information that isn't generally available to others. Is that part of it? Probably. Is it all of it? Probably not.
They're just good crypto investors, Bill. That's all.
Yeah, that's good. And they have that, they have that game of quarters every afternoon outside the Capitol. So, there's ways you can supplement your income. But we're going to find the stuff out. And when we do, again, it's going to be one of those areas people are going to go, where?
And this is an area that we're on for sure, especially the Ukraine issue. So
absolutely. So Ukraine looks like it's part and parcel of this. Why do you think people are flying over there? Is there some matter of fact, they reported this week that many of the stars, many of the celebrities that got pictures with Zelensky were paid directly.
Yeah,
I don't,
with your
4
money.
million, 6 million, 8 million to go take those pictures just so he'd make global news.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Todd.
I was going to say with your money. They were paying him with your money. Yeah.
Everything's with our money, it
Mhm.
seems. You mentioned earlier that we are going to be at CPAC this week.
Yeah,
So I
we
thought
are.
I
It's
thought
go
we'd
ahead.
share this. Take us through because you've been here a number of times before. Take us through what happens and what folks can expect to see.
We're going to be on Radio Row, so you will, if you're there, come by and see us. We're going to have a big team on the ground. We're going to be broadcasting live 3 days in a row. We'll be doing the shows directly from there, as well as interviews with infamous people and a lot of just great people that we love talking to that come to CPAC. We've kind of grown a community there, so we're looking forward to that. CDM Espanol, Sadie Chavez is going to be there as well, working on that angle with the Spanish audience. And it's just a great event. And I can tell you there's going to be some rock stars coming in there, and we're going to try to grab them and get them on camera. So if you're there, join us. If not, check us out on cdm.press. We'll be live.
We do expect that many of the folks that are high in the news at the moment will make at least an appearance. Yes. And hopefully speak to the crowd and speak to the event.
Yes.
I have not been there before, so I'm particularly excited because I think this is going to be fascinating, and we'll do everything we can to get conversations with the right folks and let you hear what the experiences are from others around the country. I think that as we go forward, we have a tendency sometimes to be a little confined in thinking that Georgia is the only place we're seeing all these challenges, but I think we're going to hear about people elsewhere that are having very similar challenges, might pick up a good idea or two about how other folks are addressing those and solving them. And perhaps we can help educate and bring some of those home.
And CDM is a staple there. So we're kind of running out of time here, Bill. Why don't I just, do you have anything else, or do you want ready to run this?
Yeah, that pretty much wraps us up.
So I'm going to run this interview because it deals with Ukraine. I think it's important, and I've got to go. So can you just close the show out when it's done?
Sure. We want to listen to the entire thing.
Well, it's about 15 minutes. I mean,
okay,
we have enough time. So
Great.
I'll just hit it and we'll go from there.
We will do it.
We are honored to have back with us Bob Amsterdam. He has been instrumental in the fight against the destruction of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church by the Zelensky government. He's coming to us from London. Bob, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you having us.
So there's been a lot happening. We had Hegseth in NATO headquarters today saying Ukraine is not getting American troops. The 2014 lines may not be reestablished, not going to be part of NATO. There's talk of Zelensky getting removed by an election. What are you hearing on the ground there, and what are your thoughts in regards to the church and how it's going to deal with all of this?
Look, I mean, number one, Zelensky is monumentally unpopular. Mm-hmm. And I want to say for the record very clearly that we have been deceived by our journalists. I cannot tell you how many Western journalists, I'm talking about the Washington Post, the Financial Times, the Guardian here in the UK, have just, for whatever reasons, failed to tell the truth about the feelings on the ground concerning the Zelensky government. It is an absolute dictatorship and a police state. That is not to say that the Ukrainian people are not extraordinarily brave, that they don't have a superb army, and that they don't have tremendous morale. And as you know, I support Ukraine's fight for sovereignty, but the government is absolutely horrific. And I will say that in Washington a year ago, I honestly felt, as an opponent of Zelensky's government, because of what they were doing to my Christian brothers and sisters, I felt at risk. I felt that literally their control and influence over the DOJ and others. They have an open criminal investigation against me in Ukraine for my defense of the church, for no other reason. It is one of the few countries on earth for defending followers of Jesus Christ. You can be given a criminal charge. It is outrageous. As you know, I have clerics in jail. I have elderly clerics literally being tortured, being kept in solitary. I have churches being burnt. I have churches stolen. What is going on? And by the way, there is another church, a state church, founded by the State Department of the United States and funded by American organizations in part, that is stealing these churches. And the crime of these followers of Christ, of a 1,000-year-old church, of a church that everyone in Ukraine was baptized in, their crime is that there is a spiritual connection to the Russian church, not an administrative connection at all. This church has been independent since 1990. In 2022, when the war commenced, they separated completely. But because there's a canonical connection, the US State Department, working with the ultra-nationalists in Ukraine, broke the chain of orthodoxy in Ukraine. And as an American citizen, I can tell you, I am horrified that American policymakers have subordinated religion in their all-out fight against Vladimir Putin. I think it is a complete crime.
Well, there's two issues there. One, people don't realize Zelensky, the government is illegitimate, as is the parliament, because they have overstayed their electoral mandate for some time. And the issue of the American State Department actually, as you said, funding, and I would say probably came up with the idea to get rid of that church and to make it happen. I mean, do you know where that came from?
Yeah, Victoria Nuland began it in 2014. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, the American ambassador to Ukraine, who was working with Nuland, was then transferred to Greece. And what happens? That man works, along with the Secretary of State Pompeo, works to convince the Patriarch of Constantinople to steal the Ukrainian denomination away from Moscow and take it for Constantinople, which violates all sorts of Orthodox law. And this plan is the State Department, along with zealots in this other church, the OCU.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it violates history too, not just canonical law.
Yeah, and again, you know, it's one thing when it's academic. It's another thing. I took at tremendous risk to my young lawyers I brought with me. I brought a team of us into Ukraine. We were visiting priests, and every priest I met was followed by the SBU. Mm-hmm. One of them was beaten up to the point he had a heart attack. I mean, these are priests.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just unfathomable to me what goes on. And let me tell you something, and I hope I still have a few minutes.
Yeah, go as long as you want.
I was in Washington last week at a religious freedom conference. Now, this religious freedom conference is a very famous conference. It's connected to the prayer breakfast. I swear to God, I didn't know if I was in Washington or Kiev. The Ukrainians were in control of the conference.
Wow.
Our money wasn't accepted because one of the sponsors of the church has just been charged with treason in Ukraine. His treason being statements he made in their parliament a few years ago, pointing out flaws in the Zelensky government. This is a man, by the way, who has been sanctioned by Russia. So no friend of Putin getting charged with, quote, treason. All in attempts to blacken the church. We get there. Last year, we weren't even allowed in the door. This year, we're put on a stage with 5 other people, given 5 minutes to tell the story of this church that's being decimated. They add to the panel a very distinguished theologian to present the Ukrainian side, because they populate every other panel with Ukrainians. They have a free cash bar for 1 hour celebrating Ukraine. Here are the ironies. Number one, where are the Ukrainians getting the money to sponsor all this? Number two, Ukraine is the only country in the world with a parliamentary bill banning a Christian church. And the guy who wrote that bill, the persecutor in chief, was on a panel concerning human rights defenders.
There you go.
I would compare that to Hitler speaking to B'nai B'rith. I mean, it was insane.
There's a lot of hypocrisy going on. What do you hear from the Trump administration? Is there an understanding of, obviously they want the war to end, which I think is obviously a step in the right direction, because to me anyway, I want the killing to stop. I think there needs to be a peace treaty. Nobody's winning in this war.
No question.
And so that's a positive, but are you getting an understanding from officials on the Trump side that they see what's happening regarding the church?
Look, to be very frank again, and I'm just, I've been with you before. I feel I can speak openly.
We're all about truth here. So
well, let me be really blunt, and I'm very sad as an ex-Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
No Democrat but one, Richard Durbin, wanted to speak to us. They don't want to speak to us. This was last year. I think now a few of them will. They don't want to speak to us. One guy did, and then his staff almost mauled me and didn't let me speak. The Republicans, to their credit, have been quite sympathetic to this story, because Tucker Carlson has had me on, to his great credit, a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I am not in a position to say much, because I have had, at this point, really no official contact with the Trump administration. I have spoken to people who were in the first administration who are, I think, quite sympathetic to the church. Mm-hmm. Robert Destro, who was undersecretary, has been very public, condemning the behavior of the Ukrainians and condemning U.S. support for the Ukrainians' destruction of the church, and God bless him for that. But you need to remember, only one senator had the courage to denounce the Ukrainians, and that senator is now Vice President of the United States.
Interesting. So, well, that's very positive. What do you see on the ground in Ukraine? I mean, obviously that things are changing, and I mean, you may not be able to answer, but I know you have people there. Are they seeing like a change in the environment to where people can talk more freely, or is the repression getting worse?
No, the repression appears to be getting worse.
Uh-huh.
Zelensky and Yermak realize they have no way out. Mm-hmm. And I think they're hunkering down. I think there's even more theft of assets. Ukraine was always corrupt. Mm-hmm. I think it's only worsening. There is, as you know, no freedom of the press. The courts are horrifically impaired. Religious freedom, when it comes to our church, does not exist. And in respect to other churches, they parade people out to speak about freedom. But, as the Russians do, they seem to have compromat on a lot of people. So You really can't tell what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. And when you have an environment where you have a major church like ours under this level of attack, facing extinction, I have congregations meeting in the woods because their churches have been stolen or burnt. And if you go to SaveTheUOC.com, you'll see videos of these poor people now meeting in the woods. And the way the law is drafted, it may even be a criminal offense for them to congregate together in the woods. I mean, this is how insane the situation is. And I am, I've been on radio, as you know, thanks to Candy. And I've been saying to people, look, call your priests, call your rabbis, and get them to speak to the Ukrainians. I mean, our request isn't to Washington, it's to Kiev to say, stop the insanity, because literally it is blackening the name of Ukraine for no reason.
Last question, the peace process. Do you think this might be a carrot in the mix to like restore this church? Have you heard anything like that in a peace deal?
I would tell you, we would be seriously disappointed if that was not the case. And one of our problems has been that Russia has not behaved well. They have been persecuting inside the occupied territories, and we share Ukraine's concern about what's happened in the occupied territories. But what Ukraine refrains from mentioning is that the majority of the priests killed in this war are our priests. And our priests are also in jail for supporting Ukraine in Russia. And again, that gets absolutely no coverage. In fact, they use damaged UOC churches as if they belong to the state church. So in terms of peace process, I would say right now, President Trump has tremendous leverage. President Trump, I have to hand it to him. I mean, I think, I spoke to a Russian colleague today, a lawyer who works in the West, and he's a brilliant guy. And he said, Bob, do you understand you are having your own perestroika? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, hey, you have a vibrant president taking over from an old doddering fool. You have all sorts of new vitality being injected into the country. Trump's restructuring everything. And I certainly would say that some of the stuff that's been done, there are issues I'm going to disagree with as a lawyer. I think we have to be very careful about any form of revenge attacks at DOJ or anything else. But my God, some of the stuff he's done in terms of, for instance, the FCPA, FARA, some of this other stuff, which was just, these are organizations set up to attack business and to attack America's ability to operate in the world. I think it's a great, as an international lawyer, I think it is a great step in the right direction to get the United States back into the world. And it's a funny thing. People say, oh, Trump's an isolationist. I don't think so. I think by taking the handcuffs off business, and let me tell you, under the Biden administration, everybody's handcuffed.
Yeah.
I mean, you have so many prosecutors going after so many people. And again, I will say to you, for all of those people who are screaming about Trump right now, it is the Biden administration that began this politicized justice. You ask serious lawyers, like the late David Rifkin. I would
say it was Obama, this was the third term of that.
The same thing. But absolutely, they politicize the system. And it's got to stop, because that's not the American way.
What about your community, Bob? I mean, the people you run with every day, Democrats or whatever, what are they, are they seeing the light? Are they, I think the left-right paradigm has collapsed, and it's more, are you for freedom or control? But are people seeing what's happening? Are they coming around? Are they thinking?
Listen, I have to say to you, I think it's also an age thing. I think guys my age, let's say the over 60 variety, especially those of us who are so poor they have to keep working. Yeah. I think a lot of us are just seeing freedoms opening up that we thought were doors closed forever, that we're thrilled about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the younger people, a lot of the Democrats are running very scared because a lot of their networks have been kind of destroyed.
Mhm.
And let's be frank, Trump has also had a tremendous break in terms of the people he's with. Some of them just, did not make the cut.
Yeah. Like
And,
Pompeo and others. Yeah.
yeah. And I think, to be frank, I think his new cabinet, I think it's a mixed bag, but there are some people in there who are like his Treasury secretary, who are really, there's a lot of hope for. And, I was not one of those who was so critical of the new defense secretary. I think there's honestly a position that it needed a dramatic change.
Mm-hmm.
We needed a clean house.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Anything else before we go? You want to get out?
I mean, look, I'm back. I'm back in Washington next week. I'm giving a speech for the Salzburg Center on rule of law. I'm going to see Tucker again, and I'm just trying to bring attention to what's happening in Ukraine. And
are you going to be at CPAC?
No, I won't. I have.
I'm going to be in DC. Let's have coffee or something.
No, I would appreciate it. As you may or may not know, I represent the Congo. So the Congo is, of course, a situation, which is, for another day, but an incredibly horrific situation going on there.
All right. When I'm in the city, I'll ping you, see if you're around. All right.
Please do. Really great to see you.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.